Hello there. Here we are, Lecture 13, and as I told you, we now move on to reviewing. And one major area of review is note-taking. I would like to make a very important point at the outset. Of course, you're concerned to do well in this particular course. But always when we're doing language, we're building. And we're building a basis for your future courses. And note-taking is an extremely useful skill for you to have in taking notes on later courses that you have. So please see this as a basis, as a foundation for your later work. So today I'd like to review some of the basic concepts we had about note-taking. Please remember that when you're listening, you're also writing. Now that may sound difficult. It is, but it is good for you. It is a known fact that if you write while you listen, you remember much more than if you just listen. Listening is not a passive exercise. Listening is something active. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be moving around, but your mind either has to be working, but you know, if you're writing notes, it helps your mind organize information. So what I did this time, I thought might be a good idea, was to review some of the basic concepts. First of all, you take down key words. Don't think you're going to write sentences. No, you're wasting time. You want the words that are going to preserve the information. Best of all, if you can use symbols, you will use symbols. You'll use the dollar sign. You'll use a % sign. You'll use arrows. You'll underline. And I thought it was good to give you an example. And I hope a teacher should be a good example. And so I'm trying to be an example. So what I did, I took notes. And I'm going to let you look at these notes as I read the lecture quickly. And then I'm going to show you the typed form. I know you may find my handwriting not always so clear. So I've typed them also for you. But I wanted you to see how I took this down as a lecture. And then we'll talk about part by part. So here is the lecture. Good afternoon. Today we'll be talking about customs. And I want to start by telling you a story. This is a story about a lady named Consuela, spelled Consuela. And Consuela is from Mexico, but she goes to work in New York, to work in a factory. Now, the factory she worked at was owned by someone from Taiwan. One day, Consuela came to work, and her boss handed her a red envelope. She looked inside and found $50. What do you think she did? She became very upset. She was shocked. She threw the envelope back at him. Can you guess why? She was insulted. Well, why had the boss done this? For a very nice reason. It was the Chinese New Year, and he was Chinese. And in Chinese New Year, it is the custom to give a gift of money, usually in a red envelope, to people who work for you or people around you. So he was doing something very nice, but she misunderstood it. Now, why am I telling you this story? This was a misunderstanding, and that's what often happens. Different cultures have different customs. All right, now notice if we look at the notes, I didn't take down any sentences. Story, Consuela, goes to New York, work, factory, received, envelope, $50. Notice that's a nice symbol. Insulted. I didn't say, therefore she was insulted. To me, if I put these words down, the relationship is clear. You must be sure that the relationship is clear to you because you will read your notes. That's a very important point. Everybody has his own way. Okay, and then I put a star. I always put stars to show something very important. Different cultures, different customs. I put a wavy line meaning not. They're different, to show a separation. Okay. The lecture goes on now. Let's look at the next section. What does this story show us? What is the point? It shows us that an action can have totally opposite meanings in different cultures. In this case, the boss thought he was being generous, but Consuela was insulted. So every culture has its own rules for appropriate or inappropriate behavior. Serious misunderstandings, like this one with Consuela and her boss, can occur if we don't know the other person's rules. Now let me illustrate this point by giving you some examples. And that's what I want to present in the lecture today, that there are different ways. I'm going to talk about 4 different areas. First, the way people greet each other. Next, the way they use names and titles. Third, the way people eat. And finally, the way they exchange gifts. Now notice, I took that down because that's very important. When a person gives a lecture, usually he gives the outline, the framework at the beginning. So it's very helpful if you know you have 4 things you're listening for. 1, greeting. 2, use names. 3, way eat. 4, way of gifts. I just put way of gifts. Of course, you give gifts. You don't have to say giving gifts. You see how notes, you take down what you need. But once I have that there, I can use that in building up my notes. So the lecturer, true to his statement, will begin with greetings. And so these are the notes I took down in this section of the lecture. So let's start with greeting, a very important type of custom, how we act when we meet people. We call these greeting customs. Now, many of you will know, you watch American movies, and so you know that in the United States, you see people, usually they're touching when they meet. They may shake hands, they may hug each other, they may even kiss each other if they're very close. This is very common in all Western countries. By West, we mean Europe and, of course, America, Canada as an extension, the New World. So in the West, very common to touch. However, please realize that this is not always the same. France, they kiss more regularly than in England. So it's not always exactly the same, but touch is part of Western greeting. On the other hand, people from Asia don't feel comfortable touching in public. So if you'll notice, in Japan, when people meet, they bow to each other. And the bow is a sign of respect. In Thailand, they have a different approach. They put their hands in front of them, and this is called the Y, and they greet each other this way. So notice there's no touching involved. So notice this is a very big difference in greeting customs. Understand, therefore, that someone from America going to Thailand might insult someone if he came up and grabbed someone's hand or hugged someone. People would be rather astonished. So again, example of how important it is to know the customs of other countries. All right, so to get that information down, as you can see, I put greeting, I put A. Very nice if you mark these areas. We have a standard ways of doing this, capital letters, small numbers. Okay, U.S. and Europe, touch, handshake, hug, kiss. France, kiss often. B, Asia, no touch. Japan, bow. Thailand, hands before face. Notice how easy it will be then to go back and get this information. You see the basic point that when you take notes, you don't go from one page to the other. That's dictation, writing exactly. No, you want to get the information so you can find it. Notice how easy it is to see about the U.S. and Europe, to see about Asia. We go on now to the next area. The next area, we knew that from the introduction, is about names. Okay, now another behavior that differs from culture to culture is how people use names. In America, people use first names very freely. Even if they've just met someone, they'll call him Dave or Al, they'll use the first name. Some people even call their bosses by the first name. By contrast, people in most other cultures are more formal. They're not as easygoing. They usually use family names to address people. It might be Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Green. In some countries like Korea, they're even more formal. They like to put a title with the name. So you're not Mr. Kim, you are Engineer Kim, or Teacher Kim, or Professor Kim. And so They use titles. So again, another area where names are used very differently. So again, if we look at this section, again, we don't take down any sentences, names, A, USA, first name, easy, even boss, B, other formal, Mr., Mrs., very formal career title, teacher John, manager Kim, giving examples. Okay, so that was our second part of that lecture. Come to part 3. Remember, it was about eating. I hope you're not hungry now as you're listening. Right, now I'm going to move on in my lecture to talk about eating customs. Now, I don't mean food, what you eat. I'm talking about how you eat. And first of all, let's talk about utensils. Utensils, this is the equipment you use when you eat. In Asian culture, people commonly use chopsticks. In the West, meaning again Europe and America, it's typical to use forks, knives, and spoons. In traditional areas such as India or the Middle East and Arab countries, you may eat with your fingers or use a piece of bread, but you eat with your fingers. You don't need utensils. So that's one area of eating customs. Again, you may have to adjust if you go to another country or a different culture. Another thing is, how much of the food on your plate do you eat? Well, in Egypt, you should leave some food on your dish at the end of the meal. This shows that the hosts were generous. If you eat everything, it looks like you're still hungry. People in Bolivia, in South America, however, expect you to eat everything on the plate. If you don't eat all of it, they're disappointed. Americans are somewhat the same way. They think a clean plate means you are satisfied. Okay, so let's look at the notes on that section. Okay, eating, utensil. Okay, A, Asia, chopsticks. B, the West, fork, knife, spoon. C, India, Middle East, hand. How much on plate? A, Egypt, leave something. STG is a standard abbreviation for something. B, Bolivia, eat all. Also USA, clean plate equals satisfaction. Okay? So again, notice you didn't need a lot of words, but notice it's organized so you can find the information later. If you are asked, what do people use in Asia to eat? Very easy to find the chopsticks. Okay, let's come to the last area. The last area of behavior I wish to talk with you about is about gift giving. Believe it or not, gift giving can be complicated in some countries, and it can be embarrassing if you don't know this. In the United States, if you're invited to someone's home, it's a good idea to bring some flowers or a small gift along. But don't do it if it's a business visit. It does not look right to give a gift when you're doing business. The American expression is business is business. Okay, right. And so, on the other hand, the Japanese, like many other people in Asia, give gifts more widely. They give them to their teacher, to their doctor, to their neighbor. So it's a very widespread thing. And it's a very ancient idea, and so there are special rules about gift giving in Japan. You have to be sure you wrap it the right way, the right color. You have to give it at the right time. So you have to realize in Japan there are strict rules about giving gifts. You also should be aware that there are some things you should not give as gifts. And the example is in Iran, yellow flowers are a sign that you hate someone. So it would be a very big mistake to give yellow flowers to someone there. He would get the wrong idea. Right, so let's look at this section now. Again, gift giving may be complex. U.S., flower, small gift to home, not business. I put an X through. I like to do that when you want to say no. You can put an X through the word, and that means you negate it. B, Japan, gifts usual, even teacher, doctor, wrapping important, color, etc. And then we have the last gift. I use my term no-nos, not good. You could put many words. Yellow flowers, in India. No, it's supposed to be in Iran. That's a mistake. Okay? All right, and then we come to the conclusion. Right, so to conclude my lecture, I hope all these examples will help you to understand my main point today. Each culture has its own rules for social behavior. We call them customs. We should never assume that our way of doing things is the only way or the best way. Learning about people's customs is part of being a good international citizen. Now, these were general points, so all I took down was point, cultures, unique rules. I use the word unique, special, different, okay, anything like that. Important to know, then to know them makes a good international citizen. Now, as I said, you maybe don't like my writing, but I wanted you to see how it looks when I do it. So I typed these so we can have a better idea of the same and see what was involved. You'll be able to see things much better now when I give you the typed copy here. All right. So, unfortunately, when you take notes, you can't type. You have to be writing. But if you did type them up, they look this way. And I hope you see organizationally how easy it is now to find the information. If I ask you how many areas did you discover, you have 4 areas. What was the first area? Greeting. Second is use of names. And you see the way in which this is a way of organizing when you take notes. In each area, you can see use touch, for example, handshake, hug, kiss. Okay, and then we went on, we heard about in Japan, you bow. Okay, let me get that down there. Hands before face in Thailand. Names, U.S., informal, easy use of first name, even to boss. To others, formal. I put Mr. X, Mrs. X. X means any name. Korea, most formal, use title, position. Teacher X, manager X. Eating, utensils, equipment. Asia, chopsticks. Spoon, knife, fork. I'm going through this quickly so you see how easy, once you have clear notes, easy to find the information. Okay. Key point. Okay. Now you have this. You can look at it later. Now my point is this, that of course you will be tested on comprehension. You'll have a short passage. Now it won't be totally new for you. Maybe it'll be easy for you to remember the information. But you're not doing this course just for this course. Sometime you'll have maybe a lecture later about Shakespeare or about, let's say, grammar or phonetics, and you want to get information down. Well, taking notes is a very valuable skill, and that's why we've spent a lot of time organizing different strategies, different approaches. So keep this in mind. And again, if you have any questions, please ask about it. All right, that was the lecture about note-taking. I will see you one more time, a lecture about the general skills of the course, reviewing what I expect you to know after all of these, for me, pleasant, I hope for you also, pleasant hours together. Thank you very much.